Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's interview. Today, I'm talking to NASCAR driver and PR guru, Ryan Ellis. Ryan, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you, bud?
I'm doing good. First off, congratulations on you and your wife's recent announcement.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we were planning on not telling anybody till the kid was like 18 years old and in college, but then the Women's History Month thing, we're like, okay, I gotta make sure this ties into something. And I was like, all right, I guess we'll put the announcement out. We weren't even sure the day before if we were gonna do it.
Oh, wow.
Because I literally waited till like it was completely obvious, and my wife doesn't leave the house at all.
hmm
So we probably could have gotten away with another month or two. But we're already 4 months in, so it was pretty late.
Yeah, I felt like last week it was just announcement after announcement. Like you're going to the truck race, you're having a kid. It was just, man, it's a great week for to be Ryan Ellis. So
Yeah, it was good. It was very chaotic. I know we were talking before the interview. Like I have a lot of things going on that aren't out there yet, and some that are. I'm still in classes at night, trying to pursue an advertising degree. I worked on it with or I got my degree in marketing from George Mason University, but I'm also pursuing one in advertising from Appalachian State. So classes, hockey, 9 to 5 job, dealing with Marcus, and obviously trying to put the logistics for that together, trying to fund my license. It's been absolutely crazy. I'm glad we got the time to put this together, obviously.
well, I guess jumping into it first, how did you first get into racing? Like, where was that interest to be involved, either as a driver or just in the sport of NASCAR?
Um, like when most kids were sleeping with teddy bears and stuff, I was sleeping with literal toy motorcycles. I used to wake up with like motorcycle imprints on my face as like a 2 or 3 year old. My dad raced and my grandfather raced. My grandfather was actually killed in a racing accident in 1958, driving sprint cars in Iowa. And the same year my father was born in 1958, he obviously got into racing himself. And don't know how my grandma let that happen, but he raced his whole life and like mainly on the road course side, some motocross, motorcycle stuff, and got me into it when I was 4 years old. So even though it seems like I'm an old dude in NASCAR right now, but I've been racing since I was four, so 27 years now, and it's all I've ever really wanted to do. From literally the moment I was born. Still pursuing it. I look at it as more of a hobby now, just because, as we've talked about, the funding is it's so hard to combine. It's so dependent on getting those opportunities.
So speaking about the opportunities, on the side, whenever you weren't in the car, you're doing like the PR work, and for the last couple of years, people will know you from being with Go Fast Racing. Um, like last year when the pandemic hit, being the PR rep for Go Fast Racing, how did it impact like the PR side of the sport?
Made my life 400 times easier. I went from
Really?
yeah, because I mean, I guess it depends on the driver. I'm sure for some of the bigger teams, it made it a little harder. Speaking of, there's Mason St. Hilaire, my old boss, calling me right now from Go Fast. But like, I went from not having to go to the track every week to maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks when we had that Trump sponsorship. I'd have to go do some hospitality and stuff. We were scheduling nothing for Corey because he couldn't do anything. I wasn't having to go to the track 3 days a week. I was going one if I did, and I didn't go to but maybe 3 or 4 races after the pandemic. So it made it a lot easier on me personally, and I got involved in that iRacing league that everybody watched on TV, and that was a lot of fun. But I mean, honestly, it cut from what might have been a 50-hour week job down to 25. And it was like that for a lot of the crew guys. They used to get a day and a half off, and all of a sudden they were getting 2.5, 3 days off.
hmm
So it was a very nice change.
Wow. So with the hospitality stuff and all, was it easy to shift that? Did you just focus on, all right, we'll do Zoom meetings before the race, or did you have to get creative with those?
Um, for that stuff, it was mainly like you said. It was Zoom meetings. We'd schedule like a small dinner with Corey the night
hmm
before race, and obviously at that point we didn't really know what COVID was. Nobody really knew, so we were trying to be extra careful. We were still by contract supposed to do some of those Trump show cars, and
hmm
that was really tough. One, because it was very divisive, obviously, and two, because we had to find places to put a show car that one didn't care about it being a Trump car, and two, didn't mind it being there with COVID. So we ended up doing a lot of stuff outside. We got kicked out of Texas Motor Speedway the race day and had to go find an IHOP and did it there. I was on the plane to Vegas trying to find a place, ended up at a Harley Davidson dealership. It was just finding unique ways to let fans continue to interact with Corey from a distance and figuring it out on the fly. It was fun in a way. You know, I like problem solving, and that was definitely a big problem.
Okay, yeah, and I know as a fan, that's just something I'd seen where some people said, "Oh, this is super easy," but then on other ones, I'm thinking, man, I wonder if that's difficult if people, like, if they prefer, you know, as a sponsor, do I prefer going to this, you know, giant room and watching the race for 4 hours, or do I enjoy getting to just sit down and have a dinner with someone? So,
Yeah, I think almost every sponsor would rather be in the pits because they like that one-on-one and they like hanging out with the driver right before the race. But the selling point we tried to use, which I don't know if it really was as successful as we really wanted it to be, was that we were the first sport back. You know, all the eyes were going to be on NASCAR, and we sold that, and I think it worked quite a bit. We obviously had almost, I think we had the entire year sold, mostly thanks to that Trump sponsorship. But I don't know if it's going to be easy for sponsors to continue surviving and being involved in the sport without being at the track, because that's at least 50% of the sponsorship for most of those companies.
Speaking of the Trump sponsorship, I think it was episode 1 of y'all's podcast. Y'all dove into that, and so I've told everyone that's asked questions about that to go check that out, because I'm like, you learn so much about how it came to be, what happened during it, and all. So
it was, when it was happening, I was begging for it not to happen, just because I knew, being on the PR side, I was going to get hated, and my title was also director of marketing and public relations.
Yeah,
people were angry at me thinking I got the sponsorship, when in reality I got a phone call like, "Hey, we're getting sponsored by Trump. Get ready." And I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go." And I'm just not like I'm Republican, Democrat. I hate politics. I really do. It just creates fights in ways that I would never get in an argument any other way. So like getting screamed at in Daytona or stuff thrown at us every week when we had the show car out, I was like, I don't want to be part of this.
I thought what was crazy too is, you know, you had people who were anti-Trump hating it, but also you had these people that loved Trump that also hated it because they were mad at like this or that. And I even picked that up some on Twitter, and I was just like, this is something where you can't win, because now you got the Trump people mad that you're running in, you know, 30th instead of winning because they don't understand the sport. Then you have these other people not understanding that y'all didn't go to Trump and say, we're going to donate this car. It was someone saying, here's a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a lot of money, and obviously it worked out really well for the St. Clair family. But like, I love that family to death. And Archie, I think he went over the top. He was like, I'm going to try all I can to take every bullet for the team. And he went out there and he was just Trump, 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 trying to get all the attention off the team. It worked in some ways. In some outlets, it went the other way, obviously. Corey hated it. I think he was pretty public with that, but he's also a Trump supporter. So I was like, I get where he's coming from. You can be a Republican and be like, oh, you know, I don't agree with this stuff. I don't want to wear this suit. Man, but it put me in such a weird spot. Like I was so glad when it was over. But it was cool to listen to, like, hear Mason. We want to get Archie on at some point, because Archie's side of the story, the team owner, would be phenomenal.
So speaking of the podcast, last year you and Matt DiBenedetto launched Not Another Racing podcast. What led to y'all wanting to start the podcast? And I guess diving into it, were there any like podcasts that you either took as, we want to be like this, or I guess you don't have to name any other ones, but did you listen and say, we don't want to be this one?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because obviously traveling a lot, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And Matt and I have a lot of stories that we wanted to tell, and just never felt like we had a comfortable outlet to go through. We're going to write a book at the end of it, but I got the job at Click Marketing, and that was a great job for me. And they had a podcasting room, and I was like, hey, this is kind of our shot here. And it didn't take much convincing. I actually thought it would take a little bit more, and I didn't know Penske/Wood Brothers would allow him to do it.
Yeah.
And I called him and I was like, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking of. I want to have the drunk stories from on the road. I want to have the crazy stories that nobody will believe, that Matt and I have told on the podcast, and still have a ton more that probably can't tell anytime soon. And then also stories like, if you listen to the Cody Ware episode, like
Yeah.
who people are, the battles that they're fighting, and let people get to know somebody other than their sponsors on their car. Because I think we can humanize these drivers in a way that other outlets can't, just because we are drivers. And I got the idea from Spittin' Chicklets, which is a Barstool podcast. And I love it because I know Barstool is very divisive in itself, but that outlet is something that they bring athletes on there, and they're hockey players talking to other hockey players, and they are able to draw emotions out of these people and stories out that no other outlet ever could. So it really gives you a look behind the scenes, and everybody says a look behind the scenes, but I really wanted to show everybody who these people were, because Cody Ware has gotten so much love since this episode.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that was something that I know, even like on my end, when I was trying to decide what I want to do a weekly video of some sort. And I saw these people that were talking about races. I was like, well, everyone's doing that. And I saw other ones where people were crapping on drivers and just saying, like, let me tell you why this person's the worst one. And I'm like, I don't ever want to meet, like, I don't want to ever meet Ryan Ellis and have you say, oh, you're the guy that made that video talking about how, like,
it happens
here's
way
these
too much.
stats. And I was like, well, that's like, I love talking to people. And I'm like, I'm not a negative person. So I want to do something that represents that. So whenever y'all's podcast came out, I felt like it kind of lived up to the title of Not Another Racing Podcast, because I was like, there's not another one that I listen to that fits this format.
Seriously, I'm not kidding. That's the best thing I've heard so far about it. Because I love what Corey does with his. It's real. I love Blaney because it's just him like going on his own rants.
Yeah.
And it's not always about racing, but I also wanted to be about racing without being about racing. And I think everybody's got a unique story, obviously, and just trying to find that story, and whether it's making people cry or laugh, I think that's the goal.
Because I know even when I listen to Dell Juniors every week, and there was times where they would have someone on, and I'd be like, man, I can't wait for them to talk about, like when they had Walter on, I was like, man, I can't wait for them to talk about this and this and this. Then afterwards, there's a little bit of me was like, well, they didn't even get to half of the good stuff. But I was like, well, I like that it wasn't we have to get to these 30 questions. It was a conversation. And kind of the same with y'all's podcast. I enjoyed that it's not we have to be 30 minutes, or, okay, we have to do whatever.
I wish it was sometimes, that's for sure. Matt's dad's episode, I love them both to death, but I worked with him for 2.5 years, and he's one of my best friends. After his dad got going, I took my headset off, and I was just like sitting back, telling Matt, I'm like, time. And I think we were an hour, 55 minutes in. I warned him the first time. 15 minutes later, I warned him the next time. 20 minutes later, I warned him again. And then at an hour 40, I just was sitting there like, I don't know what we're going to do here, but I liked it. So, it's different when you know somebody. It's like listening to your friend and his dad talking at the dinner table for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to, if it's, not going well, we'll shut it off at 50. If it's going great, we'll talk for 2 hours, which some people hate, some people love.
Yeah. So for you, you've had a lot of ups and downs during your career in NASCAR. Honestly, if anyone follows you on Twitter the last 2 weeks, they could even see like how that's been. What motivates you to fight so hard and want to, keep fighting instead of just giving up? And
probably I'm stupid. Probably that, I'm just too dumb to stop, which I think is my greatest skill and downfall at the same time. I love racing. I love racing. I hate the business side of racing almost as much as I love actually driving the car. I don't know. All I know I'm good at is driving a car, and I know people will go to Racing Reference and be like, well, you start and park for 2 seasons. You're like, man, you're just grinding, trying to do everything you can to stay relevant in the sport, whether it's PR or blowing Marcus up for 3 weeks on Twitter.
Yeah.
I love it. It's all I'm ever going to want to do. And it drives me way more insane. Believe me, the lows feel way lower than the highs. 6 days out of 7, probably, but that seventh
Mhm.
day makes it totally worth it. When I pulled on the track in Atlanta, I wasn't nervous at all. For the entire week, I was not nervous. I didn't realize I never raced Atlanta. And I got a rookie meeting invite on like Thursday, and I'm like, hey, I think you accidentally sent this to me. And he was like, no, you've never ran here. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I pulled out of the track, and it felt like a Richard Petty driving experience type deal. I pulled up there, I'm like, oh my God, this track is so banked. Like, why are we out here? I'm like, these things have so much power. And it was crazy because I wasn't nervous going into it at all. And then all of a sudden, like my heart rate spiked. And I was like, I hope I go to turn 1 and know what I'm doing, because that's been 5 years since I've raced a mile and a half in one of these things. And I think that feeling of uncomfortableness and knowing what you're doing at the same time is what drives me to do it.
I feel like as a fan, it's really awesome watching people like you too, because you get such a glimpse into what it's like and into that battle. And that's what I tell people all the time, is that if you're not following the smaller teams and the smaller drivers, you're missing out so much. And
Great personalities, in my opinion.
yeah, and when I was younger, they used to have a show NBS 24/7, and I bring it up probably every other episode on here, but it's
Kenny Wallace just retweeted. No, was it Kenny Wallace? Just retweeted the other week with him fighting with some driver.
it might have been, because I know that the one season that I remember, they followed it was Atkins Motorsports, Braun, and Fitz Bradshaw, and I just became obsessed. And I remember for like 2 years, I was like, man, I just want to work for Fitz. I just want to work for that small team. So it wasn't even, oh, I want to one day work for Hendrick. It was, I want to work on the small team, because it's just crazy, all the stuff going on. And
Reality TV show.
yeah, and but after that, I started following that team, and then it kept moving on to every year it would follow another team. And I remember joking with Corey that I was like, yeah, each time I bought a shirt from his team, they shut down. So there was like the TriStar, then even like Go Fast. I literally bought like a Schluter Systems hat, and then it was like, oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna shut down soon. And I was just like, all right, I'm gonna hold off on buying some Spire Motorsport stuff. But
that might be Corey more than you though.
but yeah, I feel like it's really cool when fans get to follow that, and they get the sense, instead of just, oh, here's a guy flying on his jet and getting in his car. Which, I mean, it's awesome. Everyone's got a story, but I feel like you're not going to get as much of that story, because it's really not that struggle when a sponsor says, here's 20 million, or whatever.
I totally agree. And like, I think some of the times I wish we were able to tell that story a little bit better. Because people that work so hard, like Kyle Weatherman, Bailey Curry, Garrett Smithley, like that, like Smithley, I had no idea how hard he works on his own stuff. And Cody Ware, like, I know these guys are just grinding out in the trenches every day, but they're not going to tweet, oh, hard at work doing this. Like, I like working silently and letting the results speak for themselves. And that's not so much because I don't have a lot going on right now outside of the Keen deal, obviously, which is huge for me. But I mean, every deal I get's a big deal to me, as we were talking about before the show. And I wish we had more time, but usually the guys that are working the hardest are the quietest on social media sometimes. I just get on there when I'm at the gym or killing time in between something or other.
So last weekend you got to race at Atlanta, returning to the seat in 2021. We keep off all these guest appearances.
Yeah, right. My mom this time. Somebody really important.
So we've had Mason, your mom, a random sponsor. We had. So which part of driving did you miss the most?
Oh man, you asked me this question. You sent this question over email, and I had like 10 different good answers, and I'm probably gonna screw it up. I think. Oh no, I remember. So the thing about racing is, like, everything leading up to it is stress, as we just spoke about. and it's so much hard work and you feel like it's not worth it. But the second you like buckle in there and that window net's up, nothing matters. Like nothing else is happening in the world. You know, obviously with COVID and so many bad things happening and personal life, like you could have all these battles that you're fighting, and as soon as you put that helmet on, shut your visor, it's just like, I have one mission, I have one goal, and this is all I want to do. And it's relatable to a lot of other sports in that, but I play hockey a couple days a week. I played college hockey, and I don't think you get that same rush. I don't think you get the same. This is the only thing I can think about. Like you get in there, you can't sneeze, you can't cough because your bodily functions just shut off. It's absolutely crazy. I'm sure it's similar to like, I'm not trying to compare it to obviously military thing, but like flying a fighter jet or something that's just like it's a life or death situation.
Yeah.
It knocks into those instincts. I guess at the end of the day, the fact that you can just shut everything out and you have one goal, one mission, and obviously you're going 200 miles an hour, so that's pretty cool too.
That's awesome. Ryan, I really enjoyed you joining us today. For the fans listening, if they want to learn more about you or your podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me. I'm really active on Twitter, as you know, at Ryan Ellis Racing. Same thing on Instagram, Facebook. And our podcast is at NA Racing Pod. It's called Not Another Racing Podcast. It's on all major platforms, and check it out. Obviously, appreciate you doing this. This is really cool. And if you guys have any comments on the podcast, let us know because we're always open to changing and bringing guests on. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Of course. Thank you.